Thank you very much for being here. This is me, and I'm usually not very open to say who am I. This is strange. You can hear a different accent there. It's because I'm from Mexico, live here in Switzerland, in Basel. I work for a company, JFrog. I'm a Java champion, so I am a software developer, like you all. I'm still in the technical part, but recently made my transition to developer advocacy because I have a passion for sharing knowledge, a passion for helping fellow developers to enjoy work and make the difference. So as I said, it's a privilege to be here. And in this particular place, I have been lucky enough to participate in this particular conference for several editions. So Lugano has a really important place in my heart. And even more after so many months of social distancing, being able to share a room with fellow developers. It's something that I would never take for granted. It's an understatement to say that the last 2 years, even a little bit more than that, have been full of life-changing events that have turned our life and our world upside down. I believe COVID-19, it is the most disruptive challenge we have faced up to date. It is not only the physical and the mental challenge and crisis that we're living right now. We're also having climate change in the news. Our manufacturing and supply chains have collapsed. Our food security is in risk. Our social welfare is in tatters. This is enough to overwhelm anybody and everybody. If someone had seen my previous keynotes, this is not the worst I can give it. In the past, I will show you the statistics about climate change, how many billions of dollars we were losing per year, how many lives were wasted, what were our projections. Even that was DevNexus 2 years ago, my last conference, and it was tetric. Today, I don't have to present you any numbers. We all know what is happening outside, what is happening inside. The fact that we are not sharing multiple rooms, the fact that I'm still wearing my mask, even indoors, even when I present my COVID pass. We feel like we are surrounded. And I wish I could tell you that we are at the end of the tunnel, that if we endure a little bit more, we will be past it. But I can't. And this that we all have felt, that we are still feeling, this emotional charge is turning into a physical thing. We have faced depression. We're overwhelmed, we're sad, we're hopeless. And you can see it. There's a lot of people that do not look at the news anymore. During family meetings, it's like, are you going to talk about COVID again? Can you give it a rest? It's a thing of the past. We're coming back to normal. We're so numbed that we are not longer able to process and react. We're missing something. Hope. But I happen to believe, like Greta, hope comes after action. So I cannot give you hope just because hope is possible. For me, we need to start acting first. We need to have a plan. You may be asking, what is the plan? That's an excellent question. Because we have to have a plan, a series of action that is taking us or should take us in the right direction. Moving, it's a fact. Entropy is a fact. We need to decide where, how, and why we're moving. And hopefully, in the right direction, with the great ideas. So how do we find great ideas? That's the key. Margaret Heffernan says that great ideas are like a little children, like little bit as children is born. Messy, confused, but full of possibilities. And it's only through the generous contribution, faith, challenge that they achieve their potential. So many interesting things here. We all have ideas. They are not perfect from the get-go. It is only by discussing them, by helping each other, by bringing new ideas that we can make them great and perfect. So what I'm talking about here is something like trust. I trust people because that somebody is like me. I can predict how that person is going to react to something similar that I may face. And by having this prediction of how this person is going to react, I can try new things. This is trust. Trust is built between two persons. What I'm talking about here, that it's needed to have this environment of betterment from ideas, to make a new and evolving, emergent idea into a great idea, we need psychological safety. What is psychological safety? Psychological safety is what we need to express doubt, point out errors, be able to say, I don't know, without ever feeling like we are going to be chastised, criticized, excluded. Psychological safety is so important, and there are so many companies that haven't fully embraced it. When we have psychological safety, all these different ideas can come together and deliver something nice. For example, I'm so much into sweets, so for me, the idea that you get better if you get a lot of choice, good choices. Psychological safety, there is a really nice paper if you want to read about psychological safety, was mainly studied and introduced into hospitals. And they realized that, for example, in hospitals where psychological safety was not practiced, nurses were not feeling with enough confidence to tell doctors about possible misdiagnosis, problems with the dosage of medicine, nothing. Nurses were afraid to voice any concerns in the patient care. And sometimes doctors were going into surgery rooms without knowing their team, without having ever talked with them before starting the operation. In a hospital or a medical institution that it is promoting psychological safety, this doesn't happen. First of all, there is always an open door policy where the nurses can and will go periodically to the doctors to tell them about their concerns, what is happening. All the new procedures are tested in dry runs several times before the actual first execution of the surgery. So I'm here talking about ideas. How do we create the environment for the ideas to come? And it requires an environment that is welcoming for this, but it also requires a group of people because, as I said, ideas are born in collaboration. What makes a team a great team? There are so many companies, Google, Amazon, all the top 5. How to create A teams? They had the resources, the time, the data, and the computational power to analyze that question. And they have done it for several years, actually. There's one project called Project Aristotle, and this is by Google. So they went on and decided to test all their teams, their performance, how they were structured, what they do. Because when they asked managers, what makes a team a good team? Like how I create my A team, my perfect team. And some of them will say, well, put people that can work together, that are very similar, that have the same hobbies, the same degree, the same personality traits. Turns out that by analyzing those hypotheses, they realized that that was not true. It varied. So it turns out that what it's important to create good teams is not who is in there, it's how the team behaves. So Project Aristotle talks about the 5 keys that must be there to have A teams. There has to be psychological safety, great surprise. There has to be dependability, structure and clarity, meaning of work, and impact of world. They do have this questionnaire, and I totally suggest you first that read the paper, read the articles about Project Aristotle. Actually, there is a new edition for how to improve teamwork in large, small, and extremely large companies. And they have to fill out questionnaires like that to sense the health of the team. And they're, for me, basic things, like can I trust my team will deliver in time? Do we believe that what we are doing matters? And I can go into why all these things are basic for the human spirit to thrive in. But this is nice that we have 5 questions that can give you a fast answer. What else is really needed for good teams is that they have good leaders. Good leaders that are able to provide feedback. And feedback how it's needed. That are also showing with the example. We are humans, we're prone to error, we have to accept it, we have to let people show us when we are correct and when we are wrong. We have to have trusting and respectful interpersonal relationships. We need the dry runs. We need the dry runs to improve how do we interact between others, how do we solve conflict in our teams. Now we're working remotely a lot. Before we only have like half of the team was here, the other half was in the other part of the world. Today, most of us are all around the world. Do we all have the same tools? Do we all have the same access? And obviously, check, we are humans, we are collaborating together. And there are some characteristics that are born from human behavior that happen in teams, and we have to look into them. When we do have psychological safety, it's easy for us to trust that our ideas are going to be well received. And again, remember, innovation is an expression of freedom. Creativity can only be born when we don't fear how they're going to receive, how our ideas, our work, or the artifacts that we're thinking, creating, are going to be received, perceived. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how we look, who we are. We are humans. We do have a core of set values that we need to recognize, that we can appreciate for each other. We need to have more conversations. It doesn't matter who we are in an institution, we have to find a level where we all feel comfortable communicating. And maybe in that way, we are able to achieve things that seem to be impossible before. And we can help each other. And this is also really interesting for me. We are all different. We really are all different. I mean, I'm a Mexican living in Switzerland, speaking English here with you. In a way, I have a story, a background that it's completely different to yours. I have seen things that you cannot imagine, and you have seen and lived things that I cannot imagine. My perspective on life may be different from yours. So I benefit from your differences, because then I can realize what is in me by contrast. And sometimes these different views and this realization make me conscious that my mental models may be wrong or different. So diversity. Yay! And don't get me wrong, I'm totally up for diversity. When people tell me in the board or in this meeting or in this conference, we have to have 3 women, 2 from LGBT, 1 black, I'm like, that's a start. That's great. We're forcing numbers. Perfect. That's a great start. But it's not enough. Because for me, what is needed is inclusion. But inclusion requires a mindset change. And that, it's difficult. That is not a checkbox. Now, I usually don't share this part, but do you know how many times I have been invited to a conference because I am a woman? Do you know what does that do to my ego? The first time I did that, I was angry. I almost cried. Actually, I did cry. But the point is that I said to myself, Ixchel, it doesn't matter how you got that spot. You are there. You are going to do your damn best. So let's go back to inclusion. Why is it important? Inclusion is important because it will change our minds. It will make us realize that even if we have the best team ever, everybody is from University A, everybody has this specialty, everybody scored the best grades in whatever we're counting. But if we are all the same, it doesn't matter how accomplished, it doesn't matter how great we are. We're still in an echo chamber. We're still talking about the smallest place in the pond, and I cannot show it, but imagine that's that part. We're still in a very small area based on who we are, how do we see life, how do we experience, what or who do we trust. So for me, we need different kinds of way of thinking, of way of reacting, of way of experience life. I need people that can show me that how they uphold traditions is totally different to mine. How they are willing to sacrifice or exacerbate something in order to be good at what they perceive is their meaning in life. And that comes with people. But I'm not going to tell you, like, for example, women, if you want to increase social engagement in a team, you should include women. That's not it. I mean, women and social engagement, women and documenting, women and designing interfaces. That's not a given. Statistically speaking, women are better at writing. Yes, the number of women authors is superior in non-fiction works than male. Yes, statistically speaking, that happens. But again, what we're talking here is personality traits, it's way of working, way of living, way of thinking. And that can come even from people that look exactly the same as me. Because as I said, who we are, what was our life history, may and actually has an impact on who we are. What we do, what we like to do, what we want to do also have an impact in how we are. The direction we are moving on, our age has an impact. How do we think? What mental models, what are actually our processes? The experiences that we have accumulated through life are totally different. How we perceive the world is totally different. What we hold as traditions, like identity of our people or our families, of our culture. So we need to be very mindful about our differences. And being mindful about our difference means we have to see the world again with a different eyes. And here's the kicker for you. We cannot value or perceive what we don't see first in ourselves. I cannot value love if I don't love myself. I cannot value optimism on positivism if I don't feel it first myself. So this exploring the world outside starts with an exploration inside. Who we are, who am I? How deep should we go in this introspection? There is a video, and for the one that wants to see it, and it's amazing, I actually love that video, from the interviews of Richard Feynman. He realized that he could count. For example, he was studying his perception of time. And he said, well, I can count when a minute has passed. Like without any clock, I will say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he will calibrate himself and says, yes, 1 minute has passed. So, and he was fairly correct all the time. So he had a good perception of time. And he said, well, what else can I do while I count time? What else can affect my perception of time, my internal perception of time? So he decided to count stacked newspapers. So he will say 1, 2, 3, a minute has passed and there are 45 newspapers in this stack. So he was sitting down and explaining that discovery to a mathematician in the same university. And the mathematician said, you're crazy. That's not possible. I cannot count things while counting in my head. And Richard Feynman was like, of course you can. And he demonstrated. And he said, what I cannot do is listen to something. And the mathematician was like, but of course you can listen to something while you count. So they did the same experiment. Now the mathematician was doing the experiment, and while he was saying 1, 2, 3, 4, a minute has passed, Richard was reading him a newspaper article. So at the end of the count, the mathematician was able to tell Richard what the article was about. So he could listen to something, retain that information while counting. Richard was baffled. He couldn't do it. Like, what was wrong with him? Turns out that Richard Feynman heard in his mind 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, of course, he could use the same counting method for another thing. The mathematician didn't hear a voice saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The mathematician saw a reel with changing numbers. 1, 2. So it was totally visual for him. So of course he could do something else. And that something else was a sound input while counting, because they didn't interfere. So Richard Feynman said, how something so basic is profoundly different in us. So he actually hypothesized that maybe when we said it is obvious that you should have seen that, it's not a matter that it's obvious for me, obviously. If I'm saying that, probably I think it's obvious for me. But part of our impossibility to communicate maybe is that we have such different mental models, and there is only a problem of communication and translation of these mental models between two different persons. So what we can have to do, and as I said, how deep do we have to go in this how do I work, who am I trip? It's very deep. I urge you to understand how your mental models work, how to try to understand how the mental models of other people actually are, and maybe we can bridge that difference. The other thing that I suggest you to learn is your emotional triggers. So increase your vocabulary. When I join a new team, I love to say that I do the Ixchel manifesto. The Ixchel manifesto means Ixchel has the following emotional triggers, and I then explain what are my emotional triggers. Ixchel, it's mainly an introvert, believe it or not, that can have bouts of extrovert activities, like conferences. Ixchel, it scores really high on openness. And then I go on and on, who is Ixchel? And people then start like noticing that I'm using certain words And I explain those words in case they are not common knowledge at that time. And they can start identifying different or similar personality traits. So this is the key. We need to identify who we are. We need to identify who the other person is. Never stop learning, because as we change, our mental model change, our personalities modify a little bit. After COVID and what we're living right now, we need a time to heal ourselves. Take that time. We are all tired. I was extremely tired. So we can start building bridges, regain focus, and remember that we are building software by people, for people, with the purpose of improving human life. Be mindful about the variable names. Do document. I know we are developers, and I can jump into the code, and I can understand the tool. But if you can make it easier for me, please take the effort. And I will do the same for you. I will put meaningful words for my variable names, even if I end up with a huge name. But again, code and life, it's a narrative. Honestly, feel creative, feel free. We spend more time reading code from other people than writing our own. When you join to a different company, most of the time at the beginning will be into reading what other people have done. So let's do our best there. Let's create good teams. Remember that I was explaining Ixchel Manifesto. Ixchel Manifesto comes from a very simple idea. I'm part of a team. I will go and fit a team. So I need to explain who I am. I need to explain who I am because this will make interactions better. And I like to explain who I am because that meant that I had the time to analyze who am I. I recommend you to use this personality test, Ocean. Most of you may have heard about Bristol-Myers. I prefer this one. This actually is translated to different cultures. It's international. And it actually talks about the dimensions of personality. You probably are very aware of extroversion and introversion that was introduced by from, and everybody knows about that. What is important about personality and personality traits is that everything is in a spectrum. You are not fully an introvert, you are not fully an extrovert. That's why I said I'm score really high in introvert, but I can do this. Openness, I have very brief definitions of this. Openness means that how open we are to try new things, flexibility, creativity, etc. In our environment, we all have this teammate that is willing to try the newest, shiniest red toy, the newest library, without any care in the world. And it's great. Sometimes we benefit a lot. Conscientiousness. Once we have agreed on a set of rules, there is one teammate that is always like, you haven't documented that. We haven't updated the rule playbook. The playbook, yes. We haven't updated the playbook, so we cannot deploy, we cannot release. We have not checked all our security concerns. And it will never, ever allow you to do a merge quest until every single thing is in green, even the optional ones. So yes, we also need that kind of personality traits in our teams. Extroversion, we need somebody that is willing to attend every single meeting that are set for our team. We at least need one person that is able to sit down for hours. Agreeableness, we all need that teammate that knows all other members of the team and can sit down in one-on-one with them and try to introduce them back into this collaboration. Not everybody wants to be in all the meetings, not everybody wants to be in all the social events. So sometimes it's easier to bring members of our team in a one-to-one basis, and there's always someone, at least in my experience, or I've been very lucky enough to have a team member that is willing to help us in that direction. Neuroticism. Until very recent, neurotics had a very bad rap because it was thought that they reacted emotionally to everything. So you don't want every person that reacts emotional to what is happening. But in recent years, management there has been a lot of studies, and there's been a lot of books about how managers can be really good managers if they score high in neuroticism. Because one of the things that is supernatural for people that score high in neuroticism is that they underpromise and over-deliver. They will not take the ideas of the team and pass them as theirs. So they are always fair into sharing recognition. Now, we are who we are. I'm an introvert. I'm here. How do I manage that? It's through 3 traits. When I go against my nature, and it's tough for an introvert being here, talking to you, preparing the session, thinking about meeting a lot of people, it's hard. But when we find a reason to do it, we're able to act out of character. We can do it. We usually do it because of work or because of love. But be mindful about that. It can burn us out. Everything like this, it can be found in an article made by InfoQ on Dr. Doolittle Ocean. If you are acting out of character a lot, make sure that you have restorative niches, places where you can decompress. For me, that means later on, I won't, like in the evening, my husband, Andres, knows that he won't be able to extract a single word from me. We are a part of this world. Not only that, we have a specific place in this world that interacts with all other persons. We're not alone. We were never alone. We came to this world in companionship. At least our mothers were there. So alone, we didn't arrive. I know that I'm telling you to do so many things right now. Study, learn, introspect, recognize. And that's a lot. The cognitive load of what I'm asking here of you to do is huge. I'm asking us to work hard, to break patterns, to question. And not only that, not only I'm asking you to move, I'm asking you to move in a very difficult direction against what we consider sometimes natural or what we have never done. I'm also telling you to do it fast. But the reasons are important. Our generation is the generation that has the power to destroy the world or to save it. We are going to be judged by them. We don't have enough time. We actually ran out of time some years ago. I need you to re-engage. We are tired. Yes. We are depressed. Yes. We are surrounded. Yes. We cannot stop. It's going to be tough. Yes. We will need to talk to people, interact. The world's in our hands. We need to work in teams. We need to listen, teach. We need to think about the future and not feel depressed. We need to continue. Thank you.